Board now.
Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock, and this is the Jefferson County Public Utility District Board of Commissioners regular board meeting. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm president of the board, and I am calling this meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participants' audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak, and if you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand or to request to speak. So we'll start with a roll call. This is Jeff Randall, president of the board and commissioner for District 1.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner District 2.
Dan Cooper, Commissioner for District 3.
We are all present and accounted for. Next item is approving the agenda. Do we have any changes, or can we hear a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye, we have an approved agenda. So the next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Do we have any members online or present who would like to make a comment?
Yes.
And please go ahead. Please help me out since my view is kind of limited.
So I'll go ahead and take it in the back there. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Frances.
If you could state your name and where you're located in the county, if you could, please. You're not
Frances Rossi. I'm located at Eagle Ridge Community Development in Port Apple.
So go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'm here today to represent or to request from the Eagle Ridge community to ask for your assistance resolving our inadequate water supply system and lack of funding for this water system that has existed since 2011, 2012. When I do the math, that's 13 years. We had a meeting, or an on-site meeting with PUD staff and engineers in December, and they were very helpful in presenting to the homeowners why our system was inadequate and what needed to be done to correct it. We were told also at that meeting that work will begin in January 2024, and this is April, and still not, work is not began. And I was informed last week that management has not approved the project to start. So that's why we're here. We feel at this point, we waited 13 years with an inadequate system. And so now I think it's more urgent because this project has been adequate. We have 8 homeowners that are on the system currently. 2 new builds that will be on shortly, plus the possibility of 3 others. And we don't have adequate water as it is. Plus the Paloma Woods water line extension is coming up here spring or summer. And we were told by staff in the meeting that when that connects, we will be totally inadequate with water pressure in our system. So that's part of the urgency. And my understanding is that PUD is responsible for the day-to-day operations. I believe our commissioner had told us that, and I understand that. But it's my understanding that the commissioners are responsible for funding and getting grants and things like that. Well, we've been with an adequate supply for 13 years. I think that's more than enough time to provide funding for us. So I think we've been pretty patient. So the other thing that we are adding, and it was discussed at the December meeting, and we were told that it was doable and that most systems have a backup generator or a pigtail or whatever you want to refer to. I mean, that's another thing that we are requesting with this system. Because as you know, when we have a power outage, we have no access to restroom facilities at all, which is inconvenient, but even in addition to that, it could be costly. I mean, I know when I first moved here, we were out for over a week and we ended up having to stay in the tip. And we can only not have bathroom facilities for a short period of time.
So you're at 3 minutes. Is there another one from your group that wants to pick up or add on? Do you have anything to present to the board?
I
Paper?
can give you my notes if you like.
I guess I could ask the general manager, are you gonna bring the board up to speed with this, or do you need this information, or?
We had a meeting this morning with the water crew and Bill Graham and discussed this. We can discuss the manager more with the board.
So do we need any notes from the group? Okay, so yeah, whoever's next up, if you want to go ahead.
And then I don't know if you want to find out.
And this is the system, it's on Oak Bay, right by Yard Hill, correct? Yeah. Oak Bay
One
Road.
thing I would like to add, during these several years, PUD staff has been very, very kind. They've listened to us, but nothing happens. I mean, it's not that they haven't.
So next up,
My name is Paul Becker. I live on Eagle Ridge Drive in Fort Hadlock. The homeowners have repeatedly requested that the system be brought up to sufficient operating standards for water usage in our homes. The equipment has been replaced several times due to faulty operation of the equipment. Let me recap what we are requesting. Appropriate adequate funds to operate and maintain the Eagle Ridge water service system. Update or repair the inadequate water service, that is to provide the appropriate pressures, pipe, equipment, and continued water service in a power outage. Please respond to our to our response. This is a reasonable request. We are requesting that we can live in our homes with an adequately funded water system to service our homes. Correct our water issues before the Pomona Wood water line extension. If there was a fire in or near this community, the homeowners at Eagle Ridge will not have the necessary water pressure to keep their property safe. It is my understanding that PUD and the commissioners have a regulatory obligation to provide appropriate water service to the residents and homeowners. Thank you for hearing our concerns. If you have any questions, please contact me. In closing, let me ask you all, if you got up in the morning to prepare to go to your office or an event, would you be happy with your water supplier if, when you began to shower, you have an inadequate water flow pressure, but before you rinse the soap off, you only have a light trickle? This has been our experience with the water pressure at Eagle Ridge, not for one day or a month, but for several years. Thank you.
What is the configuration now of the water system that reaches Eagle Ridge?
There is a small line running from Oak Bay Road about halfway up the Eagle Ridge Hill to a pumping station that was installed. And then from there, distribution lines to the houses. The pumping station has failed multiple times. And apparently the lack of water pressure coming up to the pumping station is part of the problem. I think the staff recommended that pumps be placed at the bottom of the hill along with a generator to provide power, and that the line be increased in size to provide an adequate flow up the hill to the number of houses that are currently in the distribution system and will be added in the future.
It might be helpful if you all had a copy of my notes, I think.
if you want to leave your notes, we can enter those, yeah.
That would be
And
great.
so is there anyone else from your group that wants to speak, or does that conclude the Eagle Ridge group, or?
Hi, I'm Tim Callister. I'm also an Eagle Ridge Drive homeowner. Been there only, 5-6 years now. But yeah, my big concern, other than taking a shower and having potable water when the water goes out, because Oak Bay loses power, it really is a safety concern for us. We had a discussion last summer about what if a fire from the Beaver Valley kind of blew our way? That's the prevailing wind. So we've got a big clear cut across the way. Lo and behold, a week later, less than a week, there was a fire, luckily just farther south down Beaver Valley, so it's like, so, okay, that proves my my own fears. So, having, pressure to moisten things down to protect our homes beyond the basic, keeping the area clear and the basic wildfire safety standards. That's really a big concern. Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we usually don't do a back and forth. You can just give that to us before you go. You can just hang on to it, or give it to Mike, yeah. The general manager may address this in comments when he speaks later, but it looks like something that's gonna be an agenda item somewhere down the road. We're all available, phone or email us as individual commissioners. I think you're in District 2. And Commissioner Collins is probably your commissioner at this point, but I know I've talked with some of the group and the general manager before, so I'm a little bit familiar with this as well.
We started back with and
Yeah.
Bill has been wonderful with doing a weekly check-in with me at the direction of Kevin. And I think you and Kevin started with me in a conference call back in August, because I had contacted Samantha in January and was supposed to get back with me. Well, by August, I hadn't heard, so I thought, okay.
And we have some turnover in staff.
Right, I
but-
understand that.
Yeah, but
And so since August, Bill has been very responsive. He was responsible for putting this December meeting together, which was very helpful. But then nothing has happened again.
thank you. So we're gonna move on. Leo, you had your hand up.
Yep. So my current concern, as you guys have probably seen in your emails, basically transparency from the PUD regarding the broadband. Back when you guys applied for the grants, you asked for ISPs to, please, partner with us. In doing so, you guys actually received a higher rating on your grant requests. So it actually made you more likely to get the grant if ISPs were willing to partner with you. And so we, of course, another ISP said we would. And then you guys did this thing online where people would pre-register for the grant to get connected at your home. And that was all under the pretense that this was going to, and with their knowledge that this was going to be an open access network and they would have their choice of providers. And that information would be used to see who was eligible for services and to market to them, products and pricing availability to these people. But the PUD absolutely refuses to share any information. And in your privacy policy, it actually states that customer information may be provided to partners and contractors. But the PUD absolutely refuses to do so. And it just kind of, I don't see where that's really a fair. Because you guys actually have this information, but you're not willing to share it with your partners. And we're supposed to be other Astound, Central, they all share this information of availability to homes. And these people were, and technically these people aren't even customers yet. So I mean, really, the privacy policy doesn't really even technically the privacy policy isn't really effective because they're not a customer of anybody. They're not a broadband customer of the PUD or us or Advanced Stream or anybody yet. They have their choice of who they want to choose, and they should not, and we should not be restricted on this information. So.
It's pretty good. You're all right at 3 minutes, Leo. Thank you. So I think the commissioners have all seen your emails, I would assume. And legal counsel's not online tonight, so I don't know if there's any legal issues involved. I don't know, again, whether the general manager is gonna respond to this or not. I know that staff is working on this. Beyond that, I have no information at this point.
I'll add a sentence or two in manager's report.
Okay, so that's where we are with that one. Any other questions or comments from the public online? Mr. Chair?
Tom had his hand up, but he took it down apparently.
All right, it doesn't look like it's come back up. He hasn't come back on, so I'll throw it back to you, Jeff.
There he is.
Oh,
He's got it up now.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair,
Tom.
whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to step away for a minute during the previous input from the public. I just wanted to comment that apparently starting last week or something, the audio of your meetings is almost unintelligible. I tried to listen to last week's meeting and it was just, no, forget it. There's so much echo and so much noise in the background. You just can't understand what people are saying. Excuse me. So I don't know what you've done to your audio system, but it's far below what it used to be. So if you could fix it, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Leo, for your comments. I also had a conversation with Leo this week, and I think reviewing our privacy policy, reviewing our business plan with open access, it might be appropriate for the commissioners to discuss this issue again and just be aware of how we're handling customer information with our ISPs, and that we're all on the same page about how we want to do that. And the customers may weigh in on how they want their information handled, but I've heard from Leo, his request is that once we've got fiber connected to customers, that information be provided for the ISPs that are partnering with us on open access. So, okay, so have we exhausted all the public comments? Appears that we have. Let me get my agenda back up here. So we're down to manager and staff reports. Kevin?
Okay, I'm gonna start, and this is rare for me, I may get a little emotional. Colton Worley, instead at Colton, he is leaving the PUD. And I want people to know what Colton has brought to the PUD. Colton was hired as a warehouseman. Back when Colton was hired, we did not have a computer program. He did everything in Excel, in yellow notepads. It was a huge task. As you know, at this time frame, we were failing our audits. Moss Adams was brought in to review our purchasing and material tracking. Personally, I think this was done to focus attention away from the accounting side. But during the Moss Adams review of the projects that Colton and his people were working on, we passed with flying colors. The people from Moss Adams that came in and had to do the review of boxes of paperwork that was kept at the time was phenomenal. That we were exceeded exceptionally the standards set by the Moss Adams to do material. Moving on, Colton was our first metering person. Colton programmed our first meters. Colton developed our first wiring standards for our meters that we use today. Colton deployed our first AMR system. Colton and Byron working together at Cape George. Colton is responsible for our newest AMI system. He helped in the design. He helped to set the program to bring the reads into NSC for billing. He helped set up the communication network. He is instrumental in all processes that we're using, including connect and reconnect. Colton, early on, was part of the phone system that we use today. Colton helped program our first phone system. Colton set up our early security system at 310, back when it was the building. I'm gonna tell a story about that early alarm system. The early alarm system would ring along with the phones to 3 people, myself, Colton, and Bob Phillips. So all outages after hours had to go through Colton primarily. The alarm system also came into those 3 people. This particular week, I was on call, which means I would answer for the alarms. At 1:30 in the morning, I get an alarm that people are walking around in the building. And so I could log in on our system and see some cameras. I couldn't see anything. So per our protocol back then, I actually drove to the shop to see what was going on. And Colton, at 1 o'clock in the morning, was finishing up a class that was mandatory for him in, I believe it was AutoCAD, and it had to be done that day, and he had to get it done before he went to work the next morning. Colton, our first network room for all of our conductivity, not only for BTOP, but for our computer systems. In the old building, Colton worked the communications room and then the old trailer. I don't know if you remember the old trailer. Folks spent a lot of time in there, pulling fiber and doing other work in it. Colton built our first SCADA system, and we still use the system today. He designed and built the graphics. He built the database. He designed the network that brings everything into the PUD. One of his accomplishments was a 2 millisecond failover on our fiber ring. In comparison, the BTOP fiber had to be manually changed and took hours. Colton was part of the first group that built the splicing sheets that were given to us by NOAANET. He was the first to do splicing for the PUD. He was first to help design the SCADA network fiber system that was built out and still being built out today. Colton in the substations, he was our first substation person. He was our first relaying person. He was our first wire person. Helped design the Irondale Second Bay, spent a week in ICPE's office in Salt Lake City. Helped design, bid, and purchase our first substation transformer. Those are just a few of Colton's accomplishments here at the PUD. With Colton leaving, we're gonna have to hire 4 people to accomplish the same amount of work that Colton did. My takeaway is we, as a PUD, have to be thankful for our employees. All of our employees work extremely hard. I want Colton to know it meant a lot for what you've done for the PUD. With that, thank you, Colton, and we hope you succeed other places.
Thank you. And I want to thank Kevin and the PUD for giving me so many opportunities. I mean, it allowed me to grow a family and you know, all the opportunities. I'll just be eternally grateful and wish the PUD all the success in the world.
And I want to add, since I began as a PUD commissioner, January of 2015, I'm aware of your contributions to the organization, which have been just invaluable. So I want to add my personal thanks and wish you every success. I'm sorry to see you go, but I certainly understand that you have your future to consider and, obviously, you're the kind of individual who is very, ambitious and dedicated, so good luck to you.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, I'm gonna thank Colton. I go way back. Colton went to school with some of my children. I coached him in Little League there a season or two. So again, I got to see Colton grow up and just, I can't imagine, where we would have been without him the last few years. The stuff Kevin, just like you said, just some of the things that Kevin noted, there's a lot more that go into that. I assume you're gonna stay local. I haven't heard, what your plans are, but hope you're gonna stay with the community, and best of luck to you with whatever endeavor you're working at next.
Thanks, Dan.
And Colton, I'll just chime in. I think your involvement with the PUD has been a success story both for you and for the PUD, and I hope other folks growing up in Jefferson County look to follow in your footsteps and look for opportunities with the PUD. It works for everybody, and appreciate what you've done, and hope you go on to more success.
Thanks, Chad.
Kevin, you want to continue?
Yeah, now it's just all downhill from there, so. So.
Well, we're losing Colton, so that was already pretty downhill to begin with.
So, as a management group, we are looking at, some ways to, build the management team. We're looking at, some options with some people that can come in and help us with, working together. This is something that, we are starting to look at some options. We'll bring something to the board in the near future. But the timing is probably close where we should be, really focusing in on the management group and team and make sure we're all going in the same direction. So we will be, continuing that process. There'll be updates, in managers reports in the next, 3 or 4 meetings as we work further down that path. The next thing, I will talk a little bit about Eagle Ridge. On our meeting this morning, it was with the water department and Bill Graham. I will tell you this, there are no easy solutions for what needs to happen at Eagle Ridge, and they're going to be extremely expensive. There were some questions on Bill laid out a plan to move the pump down to Deptford thing. Move the existing booster pump down. That doesn't make sense to me. I think you have to do 2 pumps, one down below, one up above. But there's a lot of things that has to be worked through. The dollar amounts, though, are in the $250,000 and above. So this is gonna be an expensive proposition. We're not sure the best paths forward. After meeting with the water team, we are gonna regroup again with HDR. It will move forward in a different path now, but the dollar amount makes this one a very difficult position for the PUD. There are some concerns for the PUD also with the existing customers that are coming on the system. Will that be even allowed? We don't know. There'll be a recommendation to the board for that. But it is, because of the discussion earlier today, we've assigned Jose to make sure short term that we get some answers to some of our questions that were brought up today, such as the booster pump positioning and how that should be done. So it is a work in progress. I will say, I don't believe anything from December has been done. The meeting today was more about we need to do something. And so we're kind of regrouping with HDR, talking about the placement of the booster pumps. The crew believes that a lot of the 2-inch water line has to be replaced with a larger, and I agree that is a big part of the solution. But it's also the big cost driver for, working in this area. So, and the hard part for the PUD is it's 250,000 and it affects approximately 10 customers. That is gonna be part of our discussion moving forward, and how do we prioritize not only this area, but other areas that need some tender loving care on the water side. It's just gonna be, setting some priorities and moving forward, so.
Hey Jeff, I could real quick, a bit of clarification on new customers, is that to Eagle, new customers to Eagle, new hookups to Eagle Ridge? Or is that the new development that's south of Eagle Ridge? Are we extending to that, or it's a clarification here?
Eagle Ridge has approximately 10 customers with some new customers coming on. What was taken over in 2011, was not adequate then, and now we're having to pay for the upgrade. It's that simple. There was an existing well that used to feed everybody, and then they tied into our system, and the piping for what water usage is today is not sufficient.
So the original design was by private developer.
No.
No, it was
No.
Jim Parker.
Oh, okay.
There was a well put in Eagle Ridge that supplied the houses. PUD came to the homeowners association and said they wanted to take over the well and would supply water, to all of the homeowners. Which the homeowners association agreed to. At some point after that, PUD decided to shut that well down. They plugged the well and ran a line from Eagle Ridge Drive up to the existing piping. I assume that was about from the well point. So all of the infrastructure that was put in was designed by PUD.
Jim Parker specifically.
Okay, thank you.
That was kind of my question too. I didn't know if we had a time now to get into this, or if we'd need to do it on a future agenda. But how did this system come to the PUD? I'm hearing that the PUD touched it last with this decommissioning of a well and running a 2-inch line. But was this a private developer-owned system prior to that? I'm just trying to understand how it all came to be.
Yeah, the developer put the well in. And then after, I think four or five homes were built, then PUD came to the homeowners association and said they wanted to take over the operation of the well.
And was that in 2011, or was that quite a ways before then?
No, that was well before that, probably around, maybe 2004 or 5.
Okay. And then I guess I have a question for Kevin. And again, if this needs to be followed up with its own agenda item, but I'm kind of curious because the questions that are coming up are, what are the standards that people should expect if they're on a PUD water service, of what kind of, quantity, amount of water, water during outages. And I don't know that we have backup power for all our water systems, but I think these are questions that I think our customers are going to have in terms of, what are our standards, to the extent what are they adopted by us, to the extent what are they set by state law or others, and where do we stand in meeting those standards. So I appreciate the situation that folks are bringing to us. It sounds like it's got large dollar amounts attached to it, but that's not an excuse. We have to deal with things that are expensive sometimes. And I don't know, fellow commissioners, do you want to have task staff with bringing this back to us with I think we probably should get updated on where it's at. And I guess, do we want to ask that this be put on an agenda, or kind of leave that to staff, whether it needs its own point on the agenda?
I'd like to see it added to an agenda. relatively soon. So that, I appreciate, the concerns of the homeowners in terms of not just, the inconvenience of running out of, warm water or any water when you're trying to shower, but also the safety issue. So, I think we need to deal with this.
Yeah, and I've heard fire flow addressed. There's a bunch of issues there. So I guess when that's put together, if the staff report could provide some background of when the system came to the PUD, things that happened, and then as well as where we stood in December in terms of the recommendations, and if you could touch on too, because this is being brought up, to what extent can you get grant money for these kinds of things, or is that just unrealistic? Just so everybody knows kind of what the challenges are and what the costs are.
So we don't, I don't have enough information to really discuss this. The information that was given to me by the water crew has to be researched. I'm gonna say, I'm not sure what was done on the December meeting is the pathway we need to go. It doesn't make sense how it was explained to me on the water side of things. So we will bring it to the board as soon as possible, but we do need to spend some time with HDR. A couple things I will say right up front, we cannot get fire flow up there. That is not, it would take an 8-inch line that we're talking, right now it's a 2-inch line. So that per standards, the fire flow isn't there now, nor do we have the capabilities to put in an 8-inch line. Something like that were to happen, in other places, we would require the homeowners to pitch in if they wanted the hydrants there, because that's what it would take.
Would we even have the capacity to support that?
Cause how it jumps on the hill, I believe the booster pump is actually in the place it needs to be. I don't believe moving it down is the right thing, but we will spend some time with HDR. Sizing of pumps, all of that, generators, there's a lot that we'd have to consider because it has to be pumped. There's no flow.
So there's a lot of work that has to be done by staff and the consultants is what we're hearing. Obviously, at some point, this needs to be an agenda item for one reason or another. I think at a minimum, we need some sort of, I'd say, monthly update on what staff is doing on this so that the public knows and can hear that it hasn't fallen off the table or put on a back burner. At a minimum, so I'm not requiring that we have it in a specific time frame. I will say this, after attending the quarterly water meeting, most of the money that's out there is gonna come from Public Works Board funding for water, and it's gonna be in the way of low interest loans. There's very little quote unquote grant type money. There is emergency money out there, but I don't know if this qualifies as an emergency. I know it's an emergency to our customers, but the way we've treated the system or not treated the system, it doesn't necessarily constitute an emergency in the eyes of the state. So that's something we'll have to figure out is what monies are available and how much, so.
And this isn't the only small water system with big problems. I mean, we have that one close to Port Townsend, Kevin, don't we, that had water quality issues that had also a big price tag to it. So these ones that were set up initially with just a few ohms, the developer put in whatever infrastructure was required at the time, and now people who have either been there the whole time or have come along later kind of come into this situation. And Dan brings up a good point. Public works loans. We've taken public works loans out for other things that are expensive that we need to fix or we need to address, and we pay them back over time. We may need to look at some public work loans for small water systems that just frankly they're not acceptable. I don't know, but it sounds like now we've got HDR working on it. We've got Jose of our staff trying to gather all the information and come forward with a recommendation. So is that accurate, Kevin?
As of this morning, yes.
Okay. All right. I agree with Dan. I think if please keep us updated. And then when we have enough information that we can have a meaningful discussion on an agenda, I think we should have it on the agenda.
And you got one more question from Eagle Ridge back here, Jeff.
Okay, take it, please.
What I would like to request, and I know this takes some of Bill's time, but he has been a wonderful communicator and keeping us informed. That has been very helpful. If we could continue a weekly update, so as you progress, that would be wonderful. If when you get ready for the agenda item, if you can let us know, because we'd like to certainly attend that. And then secondly, what does it take to get a grant or some funds that are set in whatever appropriate funding to maintain our system? It's kind of foreign to me that PUD would take on a water system with no funding to maintain it.
It actually happens all the time. We have failed systems where they're public water systems and the homeowners or the association is no longer able to take care of it, and it ends up in our laps. The whole thing down in the coil, right? Wasn't that a big water system?
Us. I mean,
Yeah.
this was a discussion that happened at the State Association of Public Utilities a week ago, and it's getting more and more prevalent. We're gonna see a lot more people with systems like yours who aren't part of a PUD or a municipality or something that, they're independently operated, that are in the same position you're in. So we're gonna be hit with it from a lot of different directions, not just the systems that we already manage or own already.
One other thing that I'd like for clarification, Paul explained how it happened that PUD moved us over, or took over just to maintain the well, where they took position of maintaining the community well. But then after PUD decided to abandon the well, there was no discussion with us. It was just a decision PUD made and said, okay, we're no longer gonna maintain the community well, we're taking it on our system. And that's why I'm saying, why would you make that decision when it wasn't an urgent decision at that point?
And I think that's something that staff, legal counsel, and the consultants will have to look at that to determine, what the best path forward is. You gotta know where we came from to kind of figure out where we're going.
Yeah, and we don't have a time machine. We can't go. I mean, we can learn from things that happen, but a lot of these issues seems like come from developments where there was inadequate infrastructure put in the first place. And we may learn something from going back and trying to figure out why was the well decommissioned. It might have had water quality issues. It was incompatible with the rest of the system. Who knows? But all we can do is go forward at this time. And I think we're hearing from staff is there aren't grants for things like this. So there is no such thing. So basically, at best, we could seek loans. And this is one of the things where the costs of it get applied to everybody on the water system, basically. So we appreciate your time, and we do need to move on. But I think your request to be informed of when it's on the agenda is a reasonable request, and we can ask staff to make sure that you are made aware of it so you can be a part of the discussion.
One quick thing. Can you please hold off on the line extension from Pomona Woods until our issue is corrected? Because at the December meeting, it was stated that that is going to have a significant impact on our water. That's already bad.
We're reviewing the whole process. At this time, I can't say yes or no. We're looking at everything. There's a lot of stuff we have to clarify from that December meeting.
Kevin, what's the status of that water line extension? What kind of a project is that?
It's a new development. I'm not sure it's going forward. Again, this is from this morning, and Jeff, I need to gather more information to really talk about this to any depth.
Okay, well, please, I mean, this is the point in time when folks come forward with new projects. There is a requirement that before they're approved, before building permits can be issued, proof that adequate water provision is available must be made. So if this is a situation where we should be weighing in saying we don't have adequate water, to provide to these folks, or the developer would have to do this in order to make adequate water, that's the time to weigh in and that sort of thing, so we don't have a continuation of a problem. All right, Kevin, you have more staff report issues to cover?
I will hit Leo's topic. We do take privacy of our customers seriously at this time. You know, we don't share information from customers. Joel and I will visit a little bit. Will's already visited with Joel, but we'll spend a little time. But as of today, customer privacy, it's required. So I'm gonna look at it, but that's how.
Okay, and I guess on that question, and I, after the conversation with Leo, I did go to the website, and it talks about, when people get connected, it lists the address of Leo's company, as well as I think at least 2 other providers that they can choose. And just, I guess from my perspective, we're early in this game. We're early in this process of getting people hooked up and establishing ourselves as a open access network. How we handle all that, and again, our customers may want to weigh in, and they may say, we don't want, we agree, we don't want our customer information put out there. We'll reach out. We have the addresses. We can reach out to other ISPs if we want to, or we could take the position of, we're just going to provide it to everybody, and those folks can then approach the customers. So I guess I feel like it is a little bit of an agenda, or it is an issue for the commissioners to consider.
Well, I'm a little confused on, it's open access, and we're going to this place with the fiber. Whether, if Leo's a customer, or if Leo has someone sign up, he's gonna get that customer's information. So I'm not sure what the breaking point is where we consider it really our information versus access information to anyone else that's on the system. I'm not sure how we determine where that breaking point is, to where the other ISP should be getting. I don't know what level of information that is, whether it's just an address. I mean, it's a little gray to me as how that really is going to be triggered for the ISPs to get the information of the address at a minimum.
Exactly. I think that's the question.
So, real quick, everyone knows where we're working. So the addresses are off of East Wilson Road, period. So I'm not sure, again, we'll do some review. Our existing policy says we don't share customer information. It's based on the RCW. We do list, and we tell customers on the website that just mentioned, they can call Leo to get a connection. We're not saying that. We're just saying when they sign up, they've said, okay, we're signing up for this. At that time, we don't share the information because we're not sure we're allowed to. Per our policy, we know we're not allowed to. The electric water side.
Before Leo goes, let me ask this question. So, I don't know what kind of a form we have, and I see Will's on the line too. So when we're extending a connection to the customer's house, is there a form where they can either check the box of, yes, please share my information with other ISPs, or no, don't share my other information with other ISPs? How does the interaction with the customer occur once we are extending fiber to them?
There's an online form. We've not added that question as an option at this time.
Okay, so we're not really giving them the option to say yes or no on it.
On sharing their information, no.
Okay. Leo, please go ahead.
All right, so other PUDs have similar privacy policies, and actually, I think your privacy policy was really just cut and paste from other PUDs policies. And the policy says partners and contractors. Technically, you guys wanted us to partner with you, but you're not willing to share the information. All other PUDs offer a list of addresses. Just because you put a blob on a map and say, okay, we're gonna be hooking up people in this area, there is no way for us, without you letting us know which addresses have actually requested that you guys bring fiber to their home on this open access network. So I mean, just throwing a blob on the map really tells us nothing. So the only thing I can do at that point is go to the county assessor's website and I can pull up a list of, you know, addresses and names of the people that own that property. And do that, but I mean, I don't know whether or not these people are ever intend to actually get hooked up. And these people, by signing up to get a fiber connection to their home, does not make them a PUD customer. They're technically not a customer until they actually enter a contract for service
So we'll bring this
at the
back,
house.
with some additional information.
What I
Yeah.
would on identifying, you know, where the build out is going, per our network engineering schematics, the contract, you know, for the subcontractor, doesn't it kind of show each different place the pond is going? I mean, is that another reference point for ISPs, is to look at our build out of what our engineering looks like?
You guys won't share it?
ISPs are actively looking at customers where we're building now, so, it is not an issue. Like I say, I think we should just bring it back.
I think Leo has made his point. I think we understand the issue, and it's really a question of when we hook up our customers, what does the definition of open access mean to Jefferson PUD? And I think that is a legitimate issue for the commissioners to weigh in on. And I think there's different options. For example, we could have a checkbox on the form that says, yes, please do share my address or other customer information with ISPs, or please do not. I think it's something for us to discuss. And again, the Tom Tiersches and others of the world may have an opinion on how we handle this. So I'm glad we're in the early stages. I thank Leo for coming forward with this. And one more, keep it short, Leo, please. Did you have
I
another
just want to
point?
reiterate again, once again, these are not your customership. They're nobody's customers. So you can't say these are our customers.
A number of times we've heard it.
We've heard you.
It's a matter that we will bring up with legal counsel so that we understand what we're responsible to do and what we're not responsible to do.
And I think what our options are too, and what's in the customer's interest. But I guess I am concerned that we are playing, you know, fair in terms of how do we define open access? Okay.
Yeah. And on that point, Jeff, on the open access, one more thing is, you know, we obviously had Moss Adams in here who's doing some grant oversight. I think it's important that we keep them in the loop on this because, you know, these federal grants, they might have that the answer to your question may be the government may already decided what the definition of open access is, and we want to make sure that we stay within the parameters of that, you know, that definition.
Yes, and I'm sure staff will probably, you know, make us aware of any specifics in the grants as we do this. I think ultimately it's probably going to come down to us and what do we think, you know, given the rules, what do we think is fair and appropriate? Okay, Kevin, do you have any more manager report?
One last thing, Tom Tersh's question about the audio. We'll make some changes today. He came in early. We believe that has been fixed. We'll verify, but we do think, what Tom brought up has been fixed and we appreciate him bringing it up.
Okay. I did have one question for you. It was under, let's see here. It was under a letter that came in, and it was a customer who had not paid a water bill in 3 years, apparently because a meter may not have been working. And it was a pretty big amount that they were being asked to pay now. And I wondered is it possible that you could just touch on that one a little bit? Or I guess a question I had was, you know, what is the law? And Joel, of course, wasn't available. What does the law say when somebody hasn't paid their bill? Is a utility allowed to go back to them and say, hey, you've been getting service from us, you know, here's how we're going to resolve the bill? Are you able to touch on that at all?
I can't touch on the specific policy. Jean has left the meeting, so she could. Our policy is we can go back 2 years, if it's in, depending on which way it goes. 6 months for the PUD, 2 years for the customer. So if we owe money, we can go back further than if they owe. So, there are policies in place, yeah. I will have Jean send something to all 3 commissioners, a little update.
Yeah,
Okay.
a little clarification on that, because I think they must have been paying like the base rate. My understanding was that maybe it was more like the consumption wasn't being charged. It was a little, again, a little confusing to read the email, what they had been charged for previously and not been charged for. Because if they went 3 years without paying a bill, it seemed like that would have been, again, that would have been an inactive account. So I was a little confused by that one as well, but again, I'll leave it up to the manager.
Can you forward me that email, cause I don't remember seeing it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, maybe we could touch on that at our next meeting,
I didn't-
just an update on that
I
one.
didn't see it. So-
I will send it on to Kevin and the commissioners as a one-way although Dan said he saw it.
Well, and I also responded to the customer just briefly saying that I would speak with the general manager about the issue, but they didn't get into any detail. So maybe it was in the response to my response that there was something like that. I'll forward that on to Kevin.
Okay. All right, I think we're down to commissioner reports then. Commissioner Collins, do you want to go first?
Is that a yes or no question?
Will you please go first?
Sure. So on the 21st of March, I met with representatives at Beckett Point to get a preliminary exposure to the consultant's report at the commission, doing benchmarking of other sewer systems, looking at costs, identifying opportunities for improvement of their current system. And they respectfully requested that they have an opportunity to present their findings before the Board of Commissioners. When I talked with their general manager, he suggested April 9th. And if we're still planning on having a presentation by the EDC and going over the procurement manual and doing an executive session, I wonder if that is going to be too crowded an agenda.
EDC is requested to go to May.
Okay, does that resolve?
That does, an executive session will probably be canceled.
Okay, all right.
And I'll be remote that day. I'll be in Spokane for knowing that the next morning.
So I met with the general manager on the 22nd, attended the PUD special board meeting on the 25th. 26th, I went out to view the potential new building for us behind the existing building on Otto Street. I was very impressed with that. It's a nice looking building, less expensive than what we had purchased, and it was a little bit smaller than I'd anticipated on the inside, but right location and newer building. So I think if we can purchase it over time, well, I guess it's not all that expensive if we can take it out of reserves. Either way, I'm fine with it. So met again with the general manager on the 29th. Later this week, I will be attending the EDC board meeting. I have a meeting with the general manager on the 8th. I'll attend the special PUD meeting scheduled for the 9th and meet again with the general manager on the 15th.
Is that your report, Ken?
That is my report and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, thank you very much. Dan, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go. Thanks, Jeff. So I met with Kevin Street on March 22nd. I attended our special meeting with Moss Adams on March 25th. I attended the Waputa quarterly water meeting in Olympia on March 28th. During contract lobbyist Bill Clark's legislative update, he said that Waputa believes there is possibly about $1 million available to 6 PUDs. And we're one of those 6 for culvert relocation funds, to offset some of the costs incurred from DOT projects. We'll keep on this as an issue to see if there's some funding there that we can get to help offset those costs. Representatives from the Public Works Board, the Department of Commerce, and Department of Health were at the meeting and took feedback from us on how communications with DOT and the state on their projects could be improved. And the challenges or successes that we've experienced with culvert relocates and how they, Public Works Board and Commerce, could possibly help us with securing more funding. Department of Health's Office of Drinking Water talked about receiverships and consolidations of water systems that could develop over the next few years. They've been developing for a long, long time, but it's starting to reach critical mass. And this is what we're talking about tonight with water systems. And over the next few years, system operators and owners either age out and or are no longer able to meet the needs of operating their systems. So counties, cities, utilities like PUDs, we're gonna have to come up with policies in place and put those in place to deal with these inevitabilities. So that's something we're finding out tonight, is we're probably gonna have to develop some policies as it relates to obviously some existing systems that we already own or operate, manage, and new ones that we're probably going to be asked to take on. Because I don't think Jefferson County really wants to do it, and so we're more likely to be the ones that this gets put upon to handle these other systems. I attended the Jefferson Fire Chiefs meeting on April 1st, and then I'm going to attend both PPC Members Forum on April 3rd and the PPC Executive Committee meeting on April 4th, both via Zoom. I also plan on attending the Port Ludlow Village Council meeting on April 4th. I'm going to attend the special board meeting I think that's the 9th, I believe, yeah. And also the County Growth Management Steering Committee via Zoom on April 9th from Spokane. So I'm gonna do that meeting from Spokane and the special meeting from Spokane, so that's gonna be a busy day. And I also attend the NOAA meeting the next morning on the 10th. I also will meet with Kevin Street on April 15th, and that completes my report.
Okay, thank you. I'll go next. So I am on the lovely island of Oahu with my son for spring break. And I am going to be going kind of light on meetings this week because I want to take full advantage of that. So on the, let's see, on the 20th of March, the Energy Northwest Outside Director Group had its final interviews, and we reached consensus on forwarding 2 names to the Energy Northwest Board to fill the position of outside director that Tim Sheldon has held in the past. And his position expired, and he is requested to be reinstated to that. So we're taking forward 2 names, Tim Sheldon and Karen Lang, to the full board, and that will be discussed at the meeting in April. I think it's in the week of the 20th, something like that. I was at the special board meeting we had on the 25th. On the 26th, I had lunch with Kevin Street and got a tour of that Auto Street building. Was very impressed. I think that may be one of the nicest commercial buildings in Jefferson County, and just very fortuitous how it's basically across the parking lot from the other building. And of course, Alaska Power and Telephone built both of those buildings, and they're a techie company, and you can see it in how it's done. And but really a nice building, and we'll talk about that later tonight. In the evening of the 26th, I attended a meeting that was put on by the North Olympic Development Council. It was an invitation to local officials in Jefferson County. So there was city representatives, county representatives, representatives from the tribes, talking about the potential for tidal energy off of Admiralty Inlet. And the lab in Sequim, the National Lab in Sequim, got some money from the Department of Energy to explore tidal energy and potentially powering microgrids in both Jefferson and Clallam counties. And this meeting was basically background information on how tidal energy worked. And there was PUD staff there also. Jimmy was there, Joy was there. And what our thoughts were as community representatives of would our community be interested in exploring the potential of tidal energy off Admiralty Inlet to potentially power a microgrid. And Snohomish PUD looked at this extensively, and that water out there has some of the highest energy coefficients of any water in the Puget Sound or Straits of Juan de Fuca. So we have this huge resource out there of potential power. And the point they're making is, well, if you guys aren't interested in it, someone else might be interested in it in some time, and that power may not even be available to you. So they're approaching it from that standpoint, and it's at the very early stages, and they have a small unit in place in Squim Bay, kind of seeing what the potential is there. So anyway, attended that meeting. It was very interesting, and I'll bring forward whatever comes out of that as we get more information about it. I'll be here all week, returning on Sunday. On the 8th, I'll have lunch with John Morrow, city manager. I'll be at our special meeting on the 9th, and then on the 10th, I'll be attending the Northwest Power and Conservation Council meeting in Olympia. I have yet to attend any of those, and they're going to be in Olympia, so it's a chance for me to meet folks involved in that organization who are from Idaho and Montana and Oregon, and I've listened to them remotely but never been to one in person, so I look forward to that. And that is all I have, unless there are questions from people in the room.
Hey, Jeff, this Dan.
Yeah.
So on that microgrid tidal project, I know in the past there's been issues about eelgrass and kelp beds and herring spawning and different things. Did those things come up? Is there a window or an alley that they figured they could do this in that wouldn't be impacted, any of those issues? Or
so those are kind of shallow water species that you're talking about, the eelgrass and so forth. You would need to bring the power from where the generator unit is. I think they're looking at probably deeper water, and that's where Snohomish PUD was looking to, further out into the channel. And if you stand on the bunker by the lighthouse at Fort Worden, the one that's down on the beach, and if you ever sit there and look at the tides, when the tides change, though, the amount of current through there is impressive, and it goes way out. But that's kind of the area they're looking at, and so there was more discussion about things like whales and other marine life, concerns about that. So the nearshore habitat, when you're talking about eelgrass and stuff like that, I think that would be a concern too. But that would be more of, I think, bringing the power on shore, because when you get out that deep, you don't have eelgrass at 100 feet down or whatever the depth is. But there was a lot of discussion about wildlife impacts.
And the other thing is the Energy Northwest outside position. I know we talked about a little bit in the past. I read I looked at the very impressive, personal resume of the other person. I was familiar with Senator Sheldon. I still would like to see us support Senator Sheldon for one more term in that position. I don't know how Commissioner Collins feels, but I know we have a vote there. So again,
we do have a vote
by the other candidate.
Yes,
it didn't really strike me as something that was related to, nuclear energy and some of the other, energy in particular, the other resume.
Yeah, she's a powerhouse in person, and she'll be at the Energy Northwest the Tuesday before the board meeting. They're having a reception, and she'll be there, and then she'll get to talk. So all I can say is that she was extremely dynamic in person, and one of the concerns I had was that we have 5 PUD commissioners on the Energy Northwest Executive Board. And then we have a few other experts. We've got a nuclear expert, Bill Patisa. We've got Janet, I can't remember her last name. She used to be with TVA and Bonneville Power. Then we've got the governor's appointees. One represents unions, one represents more environmental interests. And then John Saban has been involved in, kind of at the Northwest Power and Conservation Council level, higher levels like that. So I think the question is, if you have one more position, and if we're about to embark potentially on building a small modular nuclear plant, do we have any blind spots? And I think Tim has been brought forward, Senator Sheldon, that he has the strengths of contacts at the legislature and have potentially helping to bring funding from that direction. Concerns I have are, what kind of blind spots does the organization have in terms of perhaps not seeing issues they should see? And I think of anybody, Tim is most like another PUD commissioner of all the other people on that executive board. And my concern is the executive board covering all the issues, has the background to cover all the issues that we should be concerned about and making decisions on. So that's the only other side of the things. But I like Senator Sheldon too. I think he does a good job. Okay, that's my report. So we're down to get back to my agenda here. Pardon me for a second. We're on to the consent agenda. Do we have any changes or issues with the consent agenda, or can we have a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. The consent agenda is approved. Next item is old business, I believe, if we have it down there. Old business, we have no old business. So now we're down to item 9.1 IBEW contract approval under new business. Kevin?
Yes, and I'm gonna start, Melanie will lead the discussion and talk about the contract negotiation. I just wanna thank Melanie. She was, an excellent partner in the negotiations. I don't know if people realize how hard it is to negotiate with, contracts with unions. It is a specialty, and Melanie does an exceptional job. We're extremely fortunate to have her here, so I would like to thank her for her help and all the hard work she did on this negotiation. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin, and I'll extend that thank you back to you as a partner in this process. So for tonight, I'm happy to share that we've come to a tentative agreement after months of negotiation with the union. So it's IBW Local 77, that is a contract that we were bargaining. And so the red line version is included in the packet, but I'd like to spend some time just going over the key highlights of the changes. So we've agreed to a 3-year contract with them. It would become effective May 1st through April 30th, 2027. We've agreed to increase the deferred compensation match from 4% to 4.5%. There will be an increase in the life insurance benefit, and that's going from $5,000 to $50,000, which is aligned with our non-represented staff and employees covered by the laborers union. The clothing allowance for flame-resistant clothing increased from 1,000 to 1,100, and that's on an annual basis. For positions who do not need FR clothing, their annual allowance would be $525. New hires would receive a 125% of the annual amount for their first year, and that's basically just some initial clothing to get them up and running. We also agreed to increase the boot and tool allowance from $300 to $400 for positions that need climbing boots. Positions who do not need the climbing boots would receive $325 annually for the boot and tool allowance. So we're also looking at transitioning to what we call a meal adder. And so right now, when employees are working overtime, we give them a meal allowance at certain intervals. And this would be a departure from that. We would give employees a $5 additional adder to the overtime hours that they worked, and that would cover the meal costs. And we think this will be more straightforward when it comes to payroll administration. So in our previous contract, the PUD paid half of the employee's portion of the Washington State paid family leave. Employees are taxed for the hours that they work. And we are going to, instead of covering the employee's cost of the tax, so in the old contract, we had covered 50%, and now we're basically asking employees to cover their own portion. of that tax. We added an article that will allow the general manager to put crews on a staggered schedule during declared events. And so this would essentially give the PD the ability to keep employees on staff at all times instead of having our staff go on, you know, their regular work shifts. So more coverage for the PUD. We have also updated the language to reflect more inclusive language, not specific to any one gender. We've created a general foreman classification that will be up to the discretion of the general manager to determine if we need that position at some point in the future. We're also looking at splitting the warehouse and fleet departments so that those two departments can focus on their respective areas. And we also added a new meter installer classification to the compensation table. So for wages, we have agreed to a cost of living increase aligned with the CPIW for Seattle Tacoma for each year of the contract, plus an additional 0.65% increase for 2024. So that would bring us up to 6.15% effective May 1st. For 2025 and 2026, we would do CPIW plus an additional 0.5%. And the floor of that would be 2.5, so it cannot go under 2.5, the ceiling would be 8%, so it cannot exceed the 8%. And I will pause right now for any questions.
Questions by commissioners?
Yep. Do you have more presentation? I know that we've included fleet and broadband. Is that something you're gonna talk about further, or you wanna discuss that? And so we actually are adding more employees to the union contract, if I'm not mistaken, is that?
That is correct. That is correct. Yeah, so, you mentioned broadband. We did add network technicians to the salary table. That was a few months ago. So those are included, and with fleet and fleet and warehouse division for that is to separate the fleet department out. They would have a lead, and then there would be another basically assistant helping the fleet person, and the warehouse would get an additional person as well.
No, thanks for touching on that.
Absolutely.
Please continue with your presentation, Melanie.
So that concludes the key highlights that we pulled out. This essentially, we're looking for the board to adopt this by motion at this point, if the board is comfortable with that.
And then Kevin, what's the status on approving the contract, and is there a timeline established, or do we need to take action tonight, or what are our parameters for acting on it?
So the union did vote on the contract last week. We are hoping to get it approved this week. There's things that have to be happened before May 1, and we're there at the timeline. This really, we've been negotiating well over a year on this contract.
Okay, thanks for that context. Sorry to interrupt, Ken.
So thank you for all the work that went into this. And I'd like to move approval of the new contract with the IBEW.
All right, we have a motion to approve the contract. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Before we take a vote, is there anybody in the audience or anybody online that has any questions or comments on this? I'm not seeing any. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the IBEW contract. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. The contract is approved. I know it was difficult work, but thank you, staff, and thank you, our workers, for continuing to work for us. All right, next on the agenda, is it the Auto Street building presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Will is heading that up. He is
Okay,
quickly bringing up his information.
no worries, no worries. We're ahead of schedule, so it's all good.
Trying to help a customer that lost their glasses. Am I doing the talking to, or are you doing that?
We'll tag team, you can go ahead, we'll all tag team.
We'll all tag team, or this will be a family affair? Okay. All right, you all are familiar, the commissioners are familiar with the 193 Otto Street building, adjacent to our 191 Otto Street building where our administration and broadband offices are located. This building is currently owned by Alaska Power and Telephone. They have been relocating their employees. This is their corporate headquarters. They've been working remote, and they're in the process of moving everybody or headquartering up in Alaska. So this building is going to be available, and they have been in contact with Mike Bailey from our team for the last number of months as well.
Yeah, it's been 6-7 months, I think, that we've kind of gone back and forth on this. You know, they're ready, they don't use it that much. They only have usually a couple employees in there. State of Washington, because they're still considered headquarters, they charge them revenue. They charge them taxes on the revenue in Alaska. So they're really looking at about moving to Alaska. And the CEO is getting ready to retire. Well, he actually did retire now. Last Friday was his final day, official day with APT. So this started as one of his last things to do before his retirement. It's taking a little bit longer on both sides as things have gone in. They did approach us about the possibility of buying the property, you know, we work with them. I mean, we haven't worked with them, but most of their employees are our customers. So they are familiar with a lot of what we do, and they wanted it to stay in the utility business, so.
Building is assessed at 1.16 million.
Hey, Will, could you clarify that? Is that an assessed, or did we have it appraised, or what? Where does that number come from? Is that county assessor number, or is that a specific appraisal?
AT&T actually had it appraised, because that was one of the things in my early discussions with them is, you know, if we did it, it would only be market value, appraised value. We actually did offer to pay it just so we could get an idea of what it would be. They said they would do it because they needed it anyway, so they actually did pay. I do have a copy of the appraisal, and it was 1.16, which is lower than they expected, it's lower than what we expected. So
we will change that slide.
But even with that number, they basically are agreeing that it came in lower than they hoped, but they're still willing to offer it at that price.
Yes.
Please continue, Will.
That's okay. Built in 2002, the property layout you can see extends to, it's in the same parking lot, forms a nice little campus with our existing building at 191. And it also extends into a drain field and parking area to the, what would that be, to the north? To the north, yeah, as well. So only got about 14 parking spaces, is that correct? So we have the majority in the 191. And it's got a road access out to a right of way going back to Otto Street. And right behind the building is the right of way for the power transmission line as well. So the floor plan, right now it's about 6,812 square feet, 21 offices, some reception spaces, network rooms, got a large conference room, kitchen and break rooms, 4 restrooms, has nice natural light, and then the open areas on each floor where they've had cubicles and extra desks put in the past, but not currently. Commissioner Collins.
How many employees will the building accommodate?
So right now, we're just counting it as 21 offices. There's a possibility of doubling up folks in offices. We haven't done that review yet. How we'll get into some of the staffing plans later. Or you mean more the building capacity?
My concern is if you've got, at this point, a plan to put in 21 employees and you have 14 parking spaces, do we have the ability to expand on the available areas surrounding the building to accommodate the additional people? Or are we going to ask them to carpool or what?
Yeah, so part of the plan is if we do move forward with this building is the area, the gravel area to the north of the building is we would, up there where the number 5 is, number 4 is to make sure that is adequate enough that we can park like PUD vehicles in there and fence it in, so they're secure at night and put a camera on there. But that would, because right now we park PUD vehicles also in the parking lot. We have personal vehicles, we have the PUD vehicles. Up there, depending on, you know, number of people between the two buildings. I mean, even days now with the people that are in 191, our parking lot gets pretty packed. And it's a small parking lot, so I think we can do it. How we do it, we'll have to work that out, but moving the PUD vehicles out of the parking lot will free up quite a bit of space, because they do take up. We have the splash van for broadband over there that can take up 4 parking spots at one time.
Well, I would think it would make sense at some point to centrally locate the PUD vehicles here at 310 more than likely. For some of the people who aren't in the offices all day long, they're gonna need the company vehicle anyways. I would think they would probably park here, take a company vehicle, and then either go to the office space there or go out to the field or wherever they're going to, you know, have to go to disperse out to do the work. So.
And that is one option that could happen down the road.
And I do know that at one point they said, the people there at APT, that they had 27 employees in there with between cubicles and offices, so.
And we
They
have
have that many in there, and I don't know how much office, I mean, obviously the offices, what space they are, but I don't know how big a cubicles they put in there, so.
Yeah, I believe they even have more than the 27 that they told us, Dan. Because, if you go to the next slide. They used to, on the second floor there where it's kind of open by the open space, they had cubicles there, they had cubicles by the open space. But they, at one point in time, I've heard too, is that they had cubicles in the center of both floors too. So they packed them in when they first moved in there, they packed employees in. So it can be done. Is it the best? Probably not, but.
That property to the north, you've got that gravel road doing the loop back, plus the area that you talked about potentially fencing in that on the lot 5. I think you talked about doing some fencing for PUD vehicles, but where the gravel road is, that number on lot 4, we might need to look at, you know, literally having like informal parallel parking spaces on either side of that gravel road going out. I mean, there's a lot of room there, but we're talking about a lot of employees too, so we probably do need to think about how that parking gets arranged so that people aren't spilling onto other adjacent properties.
And will either of the two buildings at Auto Street be public facing at all, or is this strictly gonna be, you know, office type setting for our employees? Just out of curiosity, what's the plan there? Since we're talking about parking.
So my plan, or maybe other staffers' plan, eventually, I think we need to be able to take a bill and do some customer work at 193 Auto Street. But that is in the future.
Just gonna go forward some interior shots. The office is currently fully furnished.
Yeah, it's currently furnished. We are in discussions as part of this is to purchase separately the furnishings that are there. Based on tonight's decision, talk to them, get a better inventory of what's there, what the actual cost is. They gave me a rough estimate of 188,000, but they didn't really dive into it. They just looked to see what was on their books for the furnishings there and said, hey, it's 188,000. That number is likely to drop because there's probably stuff that's no longer in the building, you know, when they really get into it, so based on tonight's decision, they'll probably drop that, but we would buy it furnished. And it is nice furniture, everybody's looked at it, hasn't seen it, has thought the furniture.
Existing conference room, wired up for remote meetings. Server rooms, it shows kind of the open floor plan upstairs.
And to kind of talk about the server rooms, it right now does have, there is conduit running between the two buildings under, through the parking lot. We're not exactly sure where or how it comes up into 191, I know where it's at 193. I don't know where it comes at into 191, but the way already, so there is already some connectivity between the two buildings that, or the potential to easily connect the two buildings.
One nice thing about both these buildings is they have attics and crawl spaces, so you can, it makes it easier to run things and upgrade them over time.
So they have agreed to the one, you know, what, you know, I told them that we can only pay the appraisal value, which would be the 1.16 million. They've agreed, they're accepted to that. Based on, like I said, based on tonight's decision, I'll talk to them again tomorrow, to get in, you know, get the sales agreement or whatever done. Yes.
How is staff recommending that we pay for this?
So we have it, we actually have a slide on that.
Yeah, because of where our reserves are right now, I am recommending we take it out of reserves. It will mean a little belt tightening for a short amount of time. But if you remember, we've gone from about a $6 million reserve about 16 months ago to right at about 12 million.
A little over about 12.5, 12.6 million in not unrestricted cash right now. Altogether, we have about with our restricted cash, we have about 18.5 million in the bank, so.
So some more due diligence, again, you know, I haven't heard anything about the space that we already have here at 310, 210, you know, wherever else we have space, how many employees we have. I know we've lost a few employees, we've gained some employees. What is our cap? What do we see the number of office spaces that we need? You know, I think at some point we're gonna take a pause in growing as a utility, I would think. You know, broadband's gonna be growing some. I don't know what the water department looks like. So I think there's some due diligence involved here so the public understands. Obviously, it's a great deal, it's a great location, it fits into everything that we're doing, but having said that, does it make sense to purchase the building rather than lease in the short term if we're not really going to grow much more? So again, how many employees do we have? How many need office space? You know, those sorts of things. I think there's some due diligence the public should hear from us before we make any kind of decision on a purchase.
And some of that information, Dan, I'm gonna touch upon right now. For example, Colton, we're losing a key employee. I was not stretching the truth where I have to hire 4 people to replace Colton. We are stretched in so many places that moving forward, part of our strategy has to be, okay, how do we back up key people that are gonna leave? We can't do that today. I see us in the next 5 years having 100 employees. We know we're gonna hire over 15 employees this year. Our early estimates were 10 next year, but that'll probably go to 15. That puts us at 100 employees. This particular building, 310, was built prior to COVID. And the plan for this building was to have an open concept, put literally desks back to back to back, put everything in one big room and move forward. Fast forward, COVID, you can't do that anymore. Employees are being asked to come back to the office. It is our responsibility as a employer to give them a workspace that they can be proud of, a workspace that they can have some privacy, that they can take a phone call. It is very difficult to handle almost any of our business out in a ballroom or ballroom for, crew or CSRs to do their work. So staffing requirement is 100. Most of our offices are required, not a need or want, they are a requirement because of, there's not one person in this room, and I'm gonna include Colton, that at times doesn't have to close their door to talk to a customer or to talk finance or to go over any of these day-to-day operations, somebody's bills. We try not to let other people hear the conversation like out in the lobby. So those are the things that are happening at the PUD. I know there's a question on the growth and how fast we're gonna grow. But we've held off too long. We had this discussion about 18 months ago that we needed to start adding people and putting people to back up people if we leave. We did not do that with Colton. Colton's gonna be my example moving forward. That's something management, myself, we have failed because we cannot easily back him up. And part of that is we have ran too lean, too long.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just
Oh.
saying that we need to show this to the public, we need to be transparent, we need to show them what the need is, you know, where we are, where we're gonna be in the near term, and where we expect to be in your case of 100 employees, I don't know how far out you think that is. I
2
think
years.
we should, okay, again, we should show that, so that, you know, we can, you know, show that this is a justifiable expenditure or cost to do this. I believe that it is something that we need, something that fits in really well with the way things are working right now with what we have. But we also need to bring the public along with this to show this is how we're using their funds, especially, you know, using reserves in particular, which I think is the only path forward at this point in time, honestly, because we're gonna have to borrow, we've already borrowed money on the water and at the last meeting for broadband, and we know moving forward for other water systems and the electric side alone, we're gonna have to borrow a lot of money in the near term. So the less interest we pay, if we have the reserves to do it, I'm on board with that part of it. But like I said, we need to show how many employees we have, how much office space we're using or we figure we need per employee, to show that we are being good stewards of the ratepayers' funds, and that this is a justifiable expenditure to go with this building. I know that if we were to build something like we did here, you know, this was a retrofit and an add-on, it was 4.5 million for, you know, not many more spaces than what it already accommodated. We had some, obviously got some confidence at it. So again, I think we really do owe it to our ratepayers to show the work here. Yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't move forward, I'm saying we should show that work.
So in our budget for this year, we showed 15 new employees. We estimated 10 employees in the following year. With the review of where we need to get and some key employees, that 10 is gonna move to 15. We have 70 employees today, 15 the rest of this year, 15 next year. That puts us at 100 employees. We do need space, and we need space that our staff wants to come to work. We need them to enjoy the office spaces that we have.
So I move that the board authorize staff to go forward on purchase of the Alaska Power and Telephone Building.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I still have some more discussion questions, but I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's continue with discussion. I actually had a question I wanted to ask too, so it's under discussion. Kevin, if we approve this tonight, Can you talk, or Mike, whoever wants to take it, can you talk a little bit about the remaining due diligence that would actually occur before we would actually hand over money and accept the building? Could you go through those steps and what that timeline might look like? And then any other discussion commissioners want to ask, we'll continue with before we take a vote.
I mean, there is still, they're doing maintenance right now, they're having it power washed, they're getting their gutters cleaned. I haven't had Randy, our septic guy, go take a look at it just to make sure, but they did tell me it was about 2 or 3 years ago, they had some work done on it or had it pumped out. So that's all good. If we want to send our air and heating guy in there to take a look at it, they didn't have an issue with that. The working man came over because he was spraying, so he's like, hey, they heard you guys they might be selling the building, so I know the working man was just there yesterday. Spraying, treating it for, doing his due diligence there. So there is those little things, it's making sure. I mean, we would take it out probably 60-day, get the agreement in place to start the process. But give ourselves, 60 days or something or whatever, that they're agreed upon to finish up any due diligence that we feel like we need to do.
Okay, that exactly was my question. Who else has questions or comments or
Yeah, so
discussion?
again, the motion was to keep moving forward. It wasn't to actually authorize an actual purchase. Am I understanding the motion correctly?
No, I did,
Okay,
It was authorized the purchase. Yeah.
yeah.
okay, I thought it was
With the understanding that we don't tomorrow hand them the 1.16 million.
well, that's my point, is I think we still have some due diligence to do, as I've already alluded to, and Mike's, again, what's the total cost going to be? Right now, we're looking at 1.6, but is there going to be some inspections that determine there's going to be some maintenance or upgrading that needs to be done? I mean, the furniture, what is the final cost going to be? We're kind of signing a blank check at the moment by just saying we're gonna purchase. So I do think there's some due diligence, a few more questions to be answered about the building itself. I do think this is something we need to move forward with, but again, we need to do it methodically, step by step, and not just say, oh yeah, we're just gonna do it without laying the groundwork to say, here's why we're going to do it. And here is the actual cost, because maybe it does come in where we determine maybe financing is something we need to look at rather than using, paying for it through reserves.
So Kevin, before you go, let me pick up on that a little bit. So I think Dan's point about what will the final number be, we'll get that through the 60-day due diligence period. So we'll know before we say yes, make it so. I think on Dan's other point about bringing the public along, I think in this 2-month period, we should also bring some information back to the board about, okay, what's the capacity of the employees at the Four Corners building? What's the capacity at the 191 auto? What's the capacity at 193, to kind of show here's where we are now and here's where we're going, because you're kind of throwing these numbers at us, but I think it's important to show all that. And also we can show how we're providing our customers really good value, where to get the Four Corners building, it was 4 some million. To get the 191 auto, it was 1 point something million. And to get this one, it again would be 1 point whatever million. And if we were to even attempt to build this, it's one question of how much square footage do we need. So we have to, I think, show that with the number of employees and the capacity. But then if we were even to try and build this kind of stuff, we'd be looking at, 10 or more million, so I think it's a good deal, but we, as Dan says, I think we have to show our work. We have to show, where is this organization going? Why do we need it? But I think in the end, it's going to be pretty clear we need it.
So to put the board at ease, we have bought a few buildings in the past. Usually, it may be a little different now, but we've had to have a resolution from the board authorizing the manager to execute the sale or purchase from our side. So that will come back to the board. Our concern is we do want to tie the property up because it's been talked about in the public meeting, and our concern, or the concern with public utilities in this kind of discussion, if somebody goes in and decides to buy it, and then we lose out on the building. So there will be a resolution that comes forward with at least the dollar amounts outlined, not necessarily the spacing and some of your other questions, but the dollar amounts will be in a resolution to the board, kind of like the final purchase agreement. And then, we can bring additional information on spacings and that type of thing.
Well, I think the organizational chart too, the current and the projected, this would be helpful a little bit to, as part of this process to show, where we're going with that. So again, not asking for it tomorrow, but if we got 60 days, I think that's something that should be included, in there. So again, public facing so that we can show, why we're doing what we're doing. And again, it's came up in this meeting, obviously we're talking about this in the open, so the meeting, we do want to get our set price in on getting the purchase of it, but we've also told the public, we're looking at 100 employees. With that comes, where's the revenue gonna come from for those 100 employees in the next couple of years? So what are our fixed costs going to be? Another building to maintain and operate and those sorts of things. I think this is another issue for budget that's coming up and the long-term planning for the utility that the public needs to understand. This is a big game. This is a long play. It looks short-term, but this is a long play maneuver that we're making here because we expect to be at 100 employees within the very near future. And so again, where's the revenue for that gonna come from? What's that gonna do to our rates? We're in the middle of a rate, cost of service study. So this is why it's important that people pay attention and we do due diligence to show them all of these numbers and all of these things that are going into the planning that we're doing. Or really, it's all near term, but it's a long play as well. So again, those fixed costs, this is another fixed cost that we're gonna assume here, so.
And I guess I just add to what Dan said. I think this is a long play. And if you go back to what was Jefferson PUD prior to 2008, really different organization. I think really different long-term goals. And I think our long-term goals are really different now. And I think, as you said, Kevin, the kind of facilities, the kind of people we need to draw to help us achieve our mission, the kind of facilities we've offered to them in the past, old triple wides that were cast off by somebody else, some old metal building where the water department is supposed to meet that's may or may not have heat. We're past those days, and where we're trying to go is to be a professional organization that delivers high quality, reliable services at a good price to Jefferson County residents for the next 50 plus years. So I think this is absolutely a long play, and it's still a freaking bargain of a price. When you look, when people get in there and see what this building looks like, its location, it works perfectly. We will have a campus for a really bargain price. So any other comments and I think we've outlined the process pretty well. There's going to be more process, but we do need to act quickly if we want to take advantage of the opportunity. So any other discussion by commissioners?
I want to call the question.
Called the question. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Well, okay, we have a call. I can't remember the parliamentary procedure. Leo, is your point relevant to the motion?
Well, I've got a question about the building. That's all. I mean, is it ADA compliant?
Yeah.
It's got an elevator to the second floor?
It doesn't have the elevator to the second floor, but the first floor is
ADA compliant.
88.
Okay, we have a question called. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have a unanimous decision. Thank you for your good work, staff. And in response to Leo's question, the upper floor is small enough. I don't know that it would require an elevator, but it's a very high quality building. We have completed our business. Thank you, everybody, and aloha from Hawaii. We are adjourned.
Appreciate it, commissioners.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Is there a case of pineapple head?
Yeah, I'll watch out for flying pineapples and coconuts. Take care. Bye.